This year has been one of the best for games. Not so much for devs, but that's a whole nother story. Baldur's Gate and Tears of the Kingdom alone would have made this a good year, but then we got Final Fantasy, Lies of P, Metroid Prime Remastered, and so much more, just banger after banger. But this onslaught of games means indies have gone a little overshadowed this year. Case in point, Shadow Gambit, a game so good the devs dropped the mic and closed down. It's a little sad and makes me regret not picking up some of their other games I've had an eye on for a while, but it sounds like everyone is doing well and sounds like they've accomplished what they wanted and are just moving on to a new chapter in their lives, so I wish them the best, and if there was ever a high note to go out on, this is the one because Shadow Gambit is great. The game has you journeying across the seas as you plunder your way through the lands.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Our chief weapon is surprise.
Who, just want to help cleanse your soul with Holy Hellfire. You do this by ordering your crewmates around from an isometric point of view and having them sneak around and silently take out your enemies in real time. Yep, that's right, this is an RTS, stealth, pirate game. I'm starting to understand why this game doesn't have the same reach as Zelda. You play as Afia, an aspiring undead pirate in a world where most people seem to shrug at undead pirates. Well, unless you're... Okay, done with that. Afia frees a talking cursed ship, the Red Marley, in her quest for the former captain's treasure on her quest for fame and fortune. Cue journey filled with pirate riddles, nautical adventure, and even a banana or two. And Afia must do this by reviving the Marley's undead crew, gathering and deciphering the clues left by the former captain, and sticking it to the local government, as all good pirates do. But it seems a little unfair. Who wouldn't want to live under the Inquisition?
Our scripture is clear. Any potent piece of cursed flora is not to exceed a size larger than what is specified in Vindicta 7, verse 28.
They seem like they'd be fun at parties. You can bring up to 3 characters per mission, and each come with their own unique set of skills and abilities. There's plenty of variety for your team, but not much enemy variety. You have your regular Joe Schmo cannon fodder, some are less susceptible to blinds or distraction abilities, there's one enemy type that requires 2 hits to take down, and some enemies are linked together, requiring you to split up your team and take them out at the same time. But that's really it, which is a shame because we have magic pirates in this universe. It would have been cool to see magic pirate enemies instead of just, regular Inquisition, but it didn't affect my experience all that much. This is a stealth game, so it doesn't need that much enemy variety to be fun. Instead, a lot of the variety comes from enemy placement. There's often 4 or more enemies with overlapping view cones, requiring you to use your abilities in clever ways to single one out and get rid of them before the other notices. There's also environmental hazards you can make use of, although maybe it's just the Hitman itch, but I wish there were a few more environmental hazards because they're mostly just dropping boxes on people. But still, what's there was fun to use. Also, if an enemy talks to another one on their patrol and you kill his buddy, he's gonna wonder where he went and start getting suspicious. So there was always challenges that get you to think creatively, not to mention all the unique characters, all of which come with 2 or 3 unique skills for you to mix and match. Just bringing a different team to the same level can change up so much. Some characters can't climb certain things, some have more ranged attacks, some have more distraction abilities, and so on. So depending on the team you bring could dramatically change the options you have available to you, and require you to come up with new strategies. The game also has a simple upgrade system for your abilities, and I think this is actually a good example of just how good each character is and how confident the devs were that you'd be switching them out regularly, because you don't have an expansive skill tree that broadly makes you better or a bunch of upgrades for each individual character. Instead, each character has 1 upgrade. Now I know that sounds bad, but just hear me out. If they gave you 1 big skill tree, or each character had their own, you'd just kind of end up sticking with a handful of characters, your core team. This way, it felt more viable and encouraging to swap characters out regularly because I wasn't losing much when I did it. Instead, it felt more like I was swapping to a different tool better suited to the job at hand, but simultaneously they found a way to make the upgrades feel impactful. For example, Teresa is a sniper you can get. She has a crossbow, but she has to retrieve her bolt every shot because it's a magic soul bolt or something, I guess. But her upgrade allows it so that anyone can retrieve the bolt for her, which will teleport it back to her so that she can shoot again without having to reposition. And that's a huge deal because you're probably already sending someone over to hide the body anyways. It allows you to just plant her at a point and pick off enemies instead of having to move her back and forth. But again, there's still advantages to swapping her out with someone else, especially if you're going to a place where there aren't many high vantage points. And I was really surprised at not only how useful all the abilities were, but how often I use them. I admit I have a nasty tendency to try and just brute force my way through things in most games, focusing on whatever just does the most damage, and while I did favor the more lethal skills, that's just the nature of this type of game, The non-lethal ones, like anything that distracted an enemy or could force them to move, became invaluable to my strategies. One of my favorite characters, who I now regret getting so late, was Pincus, whose whole skill set is based around possessing an enemy and getting behind enemy lines undetected and distracting enemies so that the rest of my team can get to work. Very quickly, the game starts throwing scenarios at you where you have 4 or more enemies whose line of sight overlap each other, requiring you to get creative and use all of your character's abilities to the best, making more quote-unquote support characters like Pincus all the more valuable, sometimes even more so than more lethal characters like Teresa. It's actually remarkably well balanced, with upgrades feeling both meaningful but not overpowered, but they are rare. I think I got my second upgrade early into Act 3, and there's only 3 acts. To be fair, in Act 3 they introduce a mechanic where if you haven't used a character in a while, you'll get more XP if you bring them along the next mission. The longer you haven't used them, the more you get, both getting you those upgrades faster while also encouraging you to mix up your team. And Act 2 is more about getting your crew together, so even though those upgrades are rare, you're still getting new characters with entirely new sets of abilities, so you always have a steady feed of new stuff to learn and master before the upgrade system is even needed. And Act 3 also feels like where the meat of the game really is, with most of its missions focusing on one of your crew members, fleshing them out and telling us how they came to join the crew. Many of the levels also have different landing points scattered across the island. These mostly serves as just different entry points to the level. It doesn't change much beyond which order you do things in, but it adds some replay value. Tackling things in different order doesn't sound like much, but it does force you to rethink things. Strategy is all about positioning, so having a different starting position that also requires you to do different parts of the island in different orders, often with a different team, switches things up more than you would think, and it opens up the game to more playstyles. I love the Poison Ivy-esque character Sulady, and her ability to make cover for herself makes starting in areas of little cover a breeze. But if you don't like her, well, there's other starting points you can pick that support different team comps. Just knowing that there's another landing point that looks perfect for a certain crew member to shine makes me kind of want to try it, but I can still stick to my preferred playstyle if I want. If you're the type who likes to tinker with new strategies and team compositions or values replayability, there's some meat on the bone here for you, especially after you roll credits and unlock challenges and the ability to replay levels. And each level is pretty big too. Once you pick a mission, each island has 3 or 4, you're technically given free roam of the entire island, although there's little reason to explore or even clear the whole island. Instead, most missions will focus on, say, the northern part of the island. The next mission might focus on the southern part, and then the center, and so on like that. So you pick whichever landing you want, as close or as far from the objective as you prefer, and have at it. This means that even though I'm going to the same island multiple times, it never feels repetitive, because each mission focuses on a different part of it. One mission might have me scaling cliff sides at the beginning, another might have you skulking through a town square surrounded by enemies. Combine that with having multiple escape routes you can pick from, it means every mission on just one island has a ton of variety front to back, and there's quite a few islands too. If all of this sounds a little overwhelming, or you worry that the RTS stuff might be hard to keep track of, don't worry, it's actually pretty easy, because so long as you're in cover, usually hiding behind a bush, you're fine. Enemies can't see you unless they walk right up to you, but enemy routes don't normally take them through bushes anyways. So you can just plant your character in a bush somewhere and take all the time you need to observe, learn enemy patterns, and form a plan.
Oh, this is fascinating.
You can also just pause the game and issue one order to each of your characters, and once you hit the button, they'll all execute your command in tandem. It's just...
I love it when a plan comes together.
And the game wants you to use this mechanic as much as possible. Cooldown is relatively short, to the point where I never had to wait for it, and most encounters have enemies in each other's line of sight, requiring you to take them out at the same time. So it's a good thing it always feels great, it never gets old, and you always feel like a master tactician executing your carefully thought out plan.
You didn't see anything.
That all being said, the game is still not easy, requiring careful planning and expert execution just to get through some small areas. Also, saves coming. Lots of saves coming. Saves coming. The pirate's way. No, really, the game wants you to save scum. It's a big part of the game's story. It even reminds you to regularly quick save with a bell appearing on your screen, which you can, thankfully, turn off. But as much as some strategy games and fans might claim that save scumming bad, this game is clearly balanced for it, and it's all for the better in my opinion. Aside from it opening the game up to players newer to the genre, allowing them to make mistakes and learn from them without too much punishment, so long as they, remember to quick save, it also encourages riskier strategies and more fun strategies in my opinion, and more experimentation, because if your plan goes south, just hit F8 and you can try again. It made me feel more comfortable selecting characters I wouldn't normally try, and experiment with different team comps, because even if they sucked, just keep hitting F8 until you learn. I had levels where the team I picked and the landing I chose was clearly a bad choice, but I got through it and still enjoyed myself because it let me save scum, and I learned a lot about those characters as well. It made it so that if I did get caught, it always felt like it was my fault, and I didn't mind trying again because I had a save from like 30 seconds ago, so why not? It allows the devs to make some really challenging areas without worrying that it'll be too cheap, or that the player won't be ready for it, or whether they have the right team or not. It's a good system, and while I wouldn't want every game to be like this, it works well here. Another thing that worked really well was the pirate theme. From the ghastly green glow of your haunted ghost ship, to the undead skeleton crew, to the nautical themed cast of ne'er-do-wells that you bring along with you on your journey for adventure and plunder, they nailed it. And it especially helps that those adventures and plunder are often in just cool locations. Like this one island has giant roots coming from a tree in the shape of a skull, going throughout the entire island and has structures built around the roots, or a rocky mountainous island with the Inquisition base built around a giant pit of cleansing fire. All the islands, even the smaller ones, have that one cool eye-catching centerpiece the level is built around. It made me want to learn more about those levels, especially when they started talking to me. Yeah, several of the islands talk to you. No, I'm not crazy. They clearly lean more into the fantasy of piracy and all the legends of sea creatures and nautical mysticism and magic to create a world that is both familiar but also fantastical and unique. I wanted to learn more about this world. I wanted to dive into the legends of my cursed crew and even the Inquisition and their war against piracy. All the crew members are also interesting to learn about, and they all have their own little side story to do between missions that are interesting. Most just have you go from one point to another, talking to other crew members, and every now and then you have to use an ability for a simple puzzle. There was more variety than I expected, and seeing these characters deal with more day-to-day type problems that matched their position on the ship was a nice break from all the sneaking around, but it's weird that you can only do one per mission. So when you come back from a mission, you can do one side activity, period. Not one per character, one period. It's probably to space them out so that you always have a little break if you wanted, but it did make these side things feel a little stretched out, but I liked all the characters. They were all fun to be around and I enjoyed seeing their banter. It felt like a crew of misfits that formed a genuine family together. The story does not take itself too seriously. I mean, it's not completely silly, it has its serious moments, and my love for all the characters made some of those moments hit harder than I expected, but one of your characters also uses an undead fish that he talks to distract people. The game is a fun, silly pirate adventure, more in line with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies in terms of tone, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So is Shadow Gambit a Game of the Year contender? Well, no. I mean, have you seen this year? It's stacked. But it is a great one. A great game that deserves more attention. It does fall into a very particular niche, but if you like RTS, stealth games, or just want a fun pirate adventure, pick up Shadow Gambit. You won't be disappointed. Well, I made it to the end of this without a single One Piece reference. I think that deserves a sub. Yeah, so close. Well, I'd appreciate the sub anyways. Thanks, and have a good one.